Alright guys, so we're under the Titan today, and we're after the source of this leak. This is transmission fluid from the transfer case. And I know it's not this seal here. This is a transfer case output shaft seal. This is dry. I have had a leak here before. And when it leaks here, you'll see it wet here, coming out the weep hole and down here. On this one now, you can see the red all along here. It's kind of all wet up in there, and it's flinging out from this U-joint. So this shaft here is hollow. This is called the yoke, and the U-joint is between the yoke and the drive shaft. And there's a little cap or seal at the end here, and that sometimes gives out, and then you get what looks like just a wet ring around the U-joint. It's hollow, so that fluid can lubricate the splines in here and keep them from wearing out, absorb the shock of the output shaft on the yoke. So we're going to pull the drive shaft, split that U-joint, remove the cap from the pinion, seal it up, put it back in, and reinstall everything. The drive shaft removal on this truck is pretty easy. We've got 17mm bolts at that end, just 4 of them, and they're not that tight, so we'll go through the steps. We're likely going to lose a little bit of fluid when that yoke comes out of the transfer case, so I have a pan here to catch that. I've also got something to set the drive shaft on. When I pull it out, I don't want to get this dirty or damaged, because if we do, it will ruin that seal. Okay, so what I'm doing is I'm just going to mark this with this crayon, so we line it back up the same way. There we go. Sometimes a hammer works well to just tap the wrench, get them started. Alright, that's basically all you need. Get them started, and then you can do the rest of the way by hand. It's also a good idea to have the parking brake on. Okay, with all 4 bolts out. And it's very important that your truck is chalked, because if you pull this off and you're just in park, the truck's going to roll away, because you're disconnecting the rear wheels from the drive shaft. And this is not heavy, you can just drop it on yourself. It's aluminum, so you're going to pull this down and then slide it towards the back. And just to loosen it up, you can gently tap here or here with the hammer. Don't hit the drive shaft because it's aluminum and you could dent it and weaken it. So I'm just going to try first. Sometimes also a little pry bar in here will separate it. Alright, so we got it loose, bring it down, slide it out from the front, careful not to, and there is fluid in the end of the shaft. None's coming out of the transfer case, but I've got the rear end of the truck up. Okay, so that's what we look like out. this. We should clean this up again before we put it back on, just get some of the rust off. So the next step will be to take a ball joint press or a U-joint press and press the U-joint out, and we're going to press it on the yoke side, not the drive shaft side. And before we start, we got to move our clips. There's one clip. Two clips. This is pretty heavy, but it will work. I think we're going to use this. And so set up your press like this with the part that's going to push in the center and the open end with no adapters around the cap. So look in the center and make sure that the cap will clear and push out smoothly. And we'll grab a ratchet and start pushing. We got a 22mm socket on this. We'll just put some cranks there. Just let go. Just make sure we're okay here. If it gets hard all of a sudden, you want to stop. And you can only go so far. So it's pushing. It's basically pushing the yoke this way, and you're going to push it until you can remove the cap. This procedure is basically the same as if you're replacing a U-joint. There, that's what it. So this is what I did, just put a rag over it and then use some pliers to hang onto it. Have the rag just to protect it. And you want to be careful not to turn this upside down. It has all the bearings in there and the grease. Could potentially add more grease, but not knowing what type of grease is in there, I don't really want to mix the wrong type of grease in it. And now we can maneuver this. What's on here? There we go. I don't know, I was just holding my mouth the wrong way, I guess. So this is the pinion seal. This is where the leak is, around here. I do have another one of these. I'm going to have a quick look at the old one. See what it looks like. It was leaking as well, but it was only in the truck for a couple weeks before I replaced it with this one. So this is the one that came with the drive shaft. This one was leaking right away. They sent me a replacement one. This one lasted, I don't know, 6 months before it started leaking. But this one is actually in better shape. So I'm going to do this one. I'm going to press it out and try and seal this cap. So I took the yoke into my press and a 15/16 socket perfectly down in there to use to press it out. And interestingly enough, there was a rubber cap in there, a rubber gasket, and this is the cap that pops out. It was pressed in, so I'm not quite sure why it leaked. Possibly the seal from the cap wasn't tight on this. So what I'll do is get some RTV, reseal it up, let it dry, test it before we reinstall. So this has been cleaned with brake cleaner. It was sitting up, so any remaining transmission fluid would run out. I've got gray RTV. Cure time is 1 hour. Full cure time is 24 hours. So we'll be reassembling tomorrow I'm going to put a bead around in here. Easier with the nozzle, for sure. I know it's messy, but it's not going to really matter. What's going to matter is it's going to stick. Let's put a rubber. Let's place this in there. On this, the dimple goes down, so we're going to set that back in there, and we're going to press that back in. Okay, so I was able to press the top cap back in with the 30mm socket, same socket I used for the front pinion nut when I fixed the seal in the front diff. Now just before I let this cure, I'm going to put a little bit more right around the outside, just for insurance. Just in that crack. Okay, now we're going to let that sit for 24 hours before we test. Okay, so about 20 hours later, I've added transmission fluid into here to see if we have any leaks, and we're about maybe an hour since I've done that, and it's completely dry. No red showing underneath, so we'll empty that out and get this yoke put back on here. And I apologize if I've been calling this a pinion. The pinion is attached to the diff, and there's a pinion seal that sometimes leaks, and a big pinion nut that holds those on. This would be the yoke. This attaches to the pinion on the rear diff. Sorry. This attaches to the transfer case output shaft. So now we're pushing our cap back in. We're just going to essentially push the yoke that way. We can reinsert our ring. I can find my pliers. I should be able to get it in through there once it's compressed. Okay, the ring's in the right spot. Now this has to push in far enough that we can insert the other ring. So I'm just going to watch for that ring move. There, the ring's in. And then you want to check that it moves freely. That looks pretty good. Double check your rings, make sure they're all in properly. You may want to put a little bit of grease on here to lubricate the seal. I like to pre-lube it with a little bit of transmission fluid. It slides in well. A little bit of grease will help that seal as well. Okay, so I'm putting the drive shaft back up. I'm looking for my mark. Mark up my bolt holes. I want those lined up. You got to come up over these two braces. Balls on your left hand. And that's not what I wanted to do there. I just touched the top of the exhaust pipe and I got dirt on this. It's no good. I'll wipe that off with my hand. It was just a little bit. You grab your pinion. You've got your shaft rotated in approximately the right position. You're going to slide that in. Okay. And bring it back so it lines up. And then you can insert a bolt. The nuts were on the back. Bolts up. One nut on. And we'll go ahead and insert our other three bolts. There's lots of room to work around here, so you don't have to worry about rotating the whole thing. And the torque on these isn't that much, so I usually just do it by hand. Okay. That's about it. So next step is to level the truck and top up the transfer case fluid. Now that the truck's leveled out, we can top up the transfer case for any fluid that you might have lost from the leak or from when you pull the drive shaft out. And you're going to use a 10mm hex on the fill, which is here. There we go. I was not expecting it to be that full. So obviously it is still full. Yeah, if it pours out like that, it's full. We're probably on a little bit of a downhill run, which may be the cause of that, but it's always good to double check. And this is what I use, AMSOIL Red ATF. This is a little bit thicker transmission fluid than what's in the transmission. So Nissan specs different transmission fluids for the transfer case and the transmission. So thank you for watching. Please like the video, it helps out the channel. Comment and subscribe as well. That all helps out my channel, make more videos for you guys.